We're progressing beyond Jeremiah now. We've been in Jeremiah for a couple of months. Got some Joel for you, Joel. I'm going to start saying Joel instead. Joel. We are in chapter 2 of Joel, and then Psalm 65, and our final reading from Paul's second letter to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 4. And our second week in a row, we are in Luke 18. Let's start with Joel. So remember, one of the things that was wonderful about Jeremiah was that we knew the exact historical context for Jeremiah. And that's what makes Jeremiah makes so much sense, is because we actually understood the historical milieu that produced the book and the redaction that came with his words and all of that. Not so much with Joel. Okay, yeah. Not so much with Joel. With Joel, we have a book that is identified as written by this man. The name Joel literally means Yahweh is God. Yeah, the Jo part, that's an abbreviation for Yahweh, and El, that's the old abbreviated word for God. Yahweh is God, okay? That's all it means. And we know that Joel was the son of a man named Bethuel, okay? We don't know who Bethuel is. We don't know anything about where Joel lived. We don't know anything with regard to the historical context. There are clues though, okay? And here's the thing. So there's only there's only 3 chapters in the book of Joel. Now, in chapter 3, which we're not going to actually read from, there is a clue that this was from a later time. Yeah. It has to do with a usage of the word referring to the Greeks, okay? The Greeks didn't come on the scene until after the exile, post-exilic. Okay, which means after they had returned to the land, all right, from the Babylonian exile. Canonically, Joel is the second book of the book of the 12. Remember, the book of the 12, that is the portion that includes the 12, what we call the minor prophets, because their books are shorter. There's Hosea, Joel, and then we have Amos, and I think it's Micah, no, Obadiah, and then Micah, yeah. So, Obadiah, Jonah, Obadiah, Jonah. Micah's in there somewhere, and then Micah, okay. I knew Micah was in there somewhere. We don't read a whole lot from Joel. We read from Joel on Pentecost, if we use that reading for the eve of Pentecost Sunday or the vigil of Pentecost, or now in the 3rd year in the cycle. So in chapter 2, okay, I gotta set some context. So when Joel starts out at the very beginning of the book, it seems to be reflecting that his prophecy is in response to some sort of an agricultural crisis, okay? Some sort of a drought, some sort of a plague, I don't know. There had been drought, there had been locusts had eaten up everything. The produce of the land had stopped, it had given out. And our prophet tells about all this stuff early on in chapter 1, and then in chapter 2, it's a prophecy of restoration, that all of that happened, all that bad stuff is going to be restored. Now, it's very popular to think that possibly what our prophet is intending is an allegory, or is it metaphor, using the agricultural crisis, the drought, as all like metaphor. Like maybe he's not really talking about that. Maybe he's referring to something bigger in a metaphorical, poetic sense, with like the idea of the restoration of Yahweh, like talking about maybe, well, what if the grasshoppers and the drought and all that is just metaphor for the time they were taken over by Babylon and all that? We don't know. What we do know, though, is that the words that he gives are go into a very apocalyptic direction. When we talk about apocalyptic genre, we're talking about phrases and terms that seem to indicate that the Lord has had enough and there's gonna be hell to pay, if you will. The day of the Lord is coming, and we're not talking about the good kind of a day. We're talking about, okay, this is kind of where Joel goes. I have no explanation for why it's the second book in there. It probably chronologically should be somewhere like right before Malachi, at the very last of the 12 books. Anyway, here we have it. Chapter 2, verses 23 to the end of the chapter, verse 32. O children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given the early rain for your vindication. He has poured down for you abundant rain, the early and the later rain as before. See, the drought, whatever the drought was, I don't know. I think that it's, I tend to guess that this is a reference to something that really did happen. I do think it fits best in the post-exilic experience, like after they had come back to the land. Remember, Cyrus of Persia allowed them to reoccupy their land and to rebuild the temple and rebuild the city walls. And I think this reflects a time of that, when after they had reoccupied the land, and there was a problem. There was a drought. Well, remember, one of the problems of Israel, one of the problems that Israel had, or that God had with Israel, I guess we could say, is that Israel never gave up the native gods, the Canaanite gods, remember that the Baal worship was something that celebrated Baal as the source of abundance, which meant the good weather that produced crops, that produced a bountiful harvest. It was a very materialistic religion, and one of the things that Yahwism did was it said, oh, wait a second, Yahweh is the creator of all that. Yahweh is the Lord of history. Yahweh is sovereign over the world and nobody else. And if you think about this, when they were in exile in Babylon, that is when they became even more attuned to the creation myths of the Babylonians, and that's when the creation stories of the Hebrew Bible got solidified. A lot of them were written as a way of responding to the Babylonian creation myths and such. Even the Noah's Ark thing is kind of like a little bit of a tweak on a similar story that they encountered in Babylon. Well, think about it. If they return back, now it's like they have a wider view of the world, and there's a bigger understanding of what other religions believe in this, that, and the other, okay? So it doesn't look like they're having this struggle anymore with the gods of the Canaanites. Here's why. When they did return and they renewed their covenant and they said, we're never going to let this happen again. We're going to really hunker down and keep the law, and we're going to be students of the Torah, and we're going to make... You don't see anything like that here, whereby, they're very much dug in and like, yes, Yahweh is our God and there is no other. There's no vacillation on that whatsoever. See this? O children of God, O children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given the early rain for your vindication. He has poured down for you abundant rain, the early and the later rain as before. These are technical terms with regard to the rain. So there's no indication of whether or not the Lord is sovereign in the realm of abundance, prosperity, the weather, crops, that kind of a thing. Verse 24, the threshing floors shall be full of grain. The vats shall overflow with wine and oil. This is what you did with the produce, right? Verse 25, oh, this is awesome. I will repay you for the years that the swarming locust has eaten. Is that a reference to a literal locust plague, or is that a reference to the time when they were in exile? We don't know for sure, but I can remember when I in college I was in Campus Crusade for Christ, and this text, verse 25, was used as a preaching text, just verse 25 of chapter 2. I will repay you for the years that the swarming locust. It's a promise that anytime we experience oh, well, that was a bad time. I'll never get those years back. This is a reminder that the Lord will restore. There is a way, and through grace, that the Lord will actually repay us. It's like, how can we ever make up those losses? Well, the Lord will repay, okay? This is a very confident expression of the sovereignty of God, okay? And the grace of God. Verse 25, I will repay for the years that the swarming locust has eaten. And continuing, the hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter. By the way, those are translations of Hebrew words that refer to different kinds of locusts. Yeah, distinctions we don't necessarily have, right? We just call them locusts and locusts and locusts. The hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter. My great army, which I sent against you. See, Yahweh's the Lord of history, the Lord of weather even, right? You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dwelt wondrously with you. See, the time of restoration. So that's one of the reasons why Joel is very hopeful, okay? I'll get to that here. And my people shall never again be put to shame. This is quite a promise, right? This is actually pointing toward the eschatological direction the book goes and the turn that it takes later on. And my people shall never again be put to shame. You shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I, the Lord, am the Lord, and that I, the Lord, am your God, and there is no other. Bum, bum. Yeah, right? And my people shall never again be put to shame. And then there's that repeat of the same line. My people shall never again be put to shame. Wonderful confidence a wonderful confidence, right? And it really, if you think about it, it really only makes sense in an eschatological context, as in like an end time context, because we know, if we look through history, did there come a time when there was a time that the Jewish people experienced what we would call shame? Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I tend to like really see this more as a utopian, eschatological type of a prophecy. Verse 28. Then afterward is, again, it's one of those clues that kind of indicates like, wait a second, this is referring to something at the very end. Look at this. I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Does this sound familiar? Yeah, exactly. We're familiar with this with regard to the after the resurrection, the Pentecost preaching of Peter. Remember, this is Paul or Peter actually quotes this in his sermon, and is quoted in the book of Acts as a major, thrust of the initial Christian kerygma preaching. Verse 29. Even on the male and female slaves in those days, I will pour out my spirit. All of that is quoted by Peter in his sermon. The early church, remember, what they did was they, in the light of what happened in Jesus, they went back, reread all that stuff from the Hebrew Bible, and they had a new hermeneutic by way of making meaning of it. So we don't really have a sense of what the original meaning was, but here's the deal. Prophecy always intended to encourage. Its end goal is to encourage. It's like it's like getting a pep talk. Okay, think about it. Getting a pep talk. Does it change reality? Does it change any No, it doesn't. What it does do, though, is it puts your mind in a realm whereby, so you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's as though there's an opportunity there. I hadn't really considered that. It could happen. It's possible. That kind of a thing. This is the nature of good preaching and good prophecy. Verses 30 and following get really into the apocalyptic imagery. I will show portents in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. All of these things are considered to be signs of the presence of God, or things announcing God's arrival, okay? And I don't have time to go into all that. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood. We've heard this. We hear this thing. I think it's in the some of the Lenten songs that we have. Before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Yeah, this sounds a little bit, if you think about what we read in the book of Revelation, it's like, this kind of sounds familiar. Yeah. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. This is very key, all right? Notice, calls on the name of the Lord, everyone. So it's like, it opens up to, remember the way the early church saw it? They saw what Christ had done as opening up what Israel thought was solely theirs. Now it's like, wow, anybody can be a worshiper of Yahweh. And they don't have to become Jewish first. This is the way the Christian church understood it. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those who escape, as the Lord has said. And among the survivors shall be those whom the Lord calls. Again, you get that apocalyptic imagery of like this end time kind of a battle, and the Lord saying, enough! I've seen the suffering of my people long enough. No more. And that's why you see then in the book of Revelation, the vision of the new heaven and the new earth and all that. Okay, that's all we got from Joel today. In fact, that's all we got from Joel, period. We don't get any more Joel. Not this year, not any. There's only so much of Joel that we get. And that's it. So we're familiar with these words because of the fact that it's in our Acts reading, because Peter quotes this on his Pentecost sermon. Our psalm reflects this kind of a thing. Psalm 65. Praise is due to you, O God, in Zion, and to you shall vows be performed. Oh, you who... Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I want to read this from the Book of Common Prayer version. Yeah. All right, here we go. You are to be praised, O God, in Zion. To you shall vows be performed in Jerusalem. Notice it definitely reflects a time when the temple is there, so we don't know if necessarily the psalm was had in mind the first temple or the second temple that got built after the exile. To you that hear prayer shall all flesh come, because of their transgressions. The transgressions, that's the reason why we're making the prayers. But notice the reference to all flesh. Yeah, that's the reason why this psalm was chosen to pair with that reading from Joel. Our sins are stronger than we are, but you will blot them out. Notice how it has an extreme appreciation for the ability of the Lord to take care of those things that have kept us apart. Grace. Happy are they whom you choose and draw to your courts to dwell there. They will be satisfied by the beauty of your house, by the holiness of your temple. Awesome things will you show us in your righteousness, O God of our salvation, O hope of all the ends of the earth and of the seas that are far away. You make fast the mountains by your power. They are girded about with your might. You still the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and the clamor of the peoples. Notice the extreme imagery of faith in God as the Lord of creation, the Lord of history. Verse 8, those who dwell at the ends of the earth will tremble at your marvelous signs. You make the dawn and the dusk to sing for joy. That's a great poetic thing. You make the dawn and the sing for joy. You visit the earth and water it abundantly. You make it very plenteous. The river of God is full of water. Remember, one of the things about creation was that water and the chaos got channeled into something productive and useful. Verse 10, you prepare the grain, for so you provide for the earth. You drench the furrows and smooth out the ridges. With heavy rain, you soften the ground and bless its increase. You kind of get the agricultural imagery, the agricultural crisis that we had from Joel. Okay, yeah. You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths overflow with plenty. May the fields of the wilderness be rich for grazing, and the hills be clothed with joy. Ooh, everything's coming up roses. May the meadows cover themselves with flocks, and the valleys cloak themselves with grain. Let them shout for joy and sing. All right, enough of that. Going on to the New Testament. I'm 25 minutes in and I'm just now getting to the New Testament. I got 20 more minutes left. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 6 through 8 and 16 to 18. The reason why they cut out a few verses there is because Paul makes some personal comments to certain people in the congregation where Timothy is ministering, and it doesn't add a whole lot for our public worship. All right. 2 Timothy 4, 6 to 8 and 16 to 18. Now remember what we have with Timothy. This is our last bite of Timothy until we get back to it in 2 more years, 3 more years, whatever. Yeah, this is 2022, so 2025. This is kind of like a last will and testament. Paul is writing to, he's a mentor. His mentee is Timothy. Timothy accompanied Paul on a lot of his missions and his preachings and his missionary work. Timothy is now Paul wants to Timothy to be like a duplicate of him. It's like, if I could replicate myself in this man, I would. But all I can do is give him my best words. This is what Paul is doing. And Paul is being a little reflective of his own life, okay, and looking about what's happening to him. Remember, he is in prison. He does have a sense of I'm about to die kind of a thing, and he gets reflective about that. Verses 6 and 8 of 2 Timothy chapter 4, 6 through 8. As for me, I am already being poured out as a libation. This is a reference to activities that happened in the temple with the offerings of wine and oil. Okay, and the time of my departure has come. This is very intriguing use of the word departure, because that's what Jesus used when he was in his ministry in the book of Luke, and he remember the transfiguration. That wasn't just Luke. I think it was all the other Gospels too. Matthew and Mark. John doesn't have a transfiguration. But what was it that we're told Jesus was conversing about with Elijah and Moses on the Mount of Transfiguration? He was talking about his departure. His departure was his reference. It's actually the word Exodus. He was referring to what was going to happen on Golgotha with the crucifixion and his ultimate resurrection, right? Well, Paul here is using that same imagery. He's claiming it for himself. Paul doesn't have a messianic complex here. He's very clear on who the Savior is, but he is very proud, happy, joyous. I don't know what's the right word there. But he's like, the fact that my life is going the way Jesus' life went, could have done worse. He's pretty happy with it, is what I'm trying to say. And the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. This is, my dad was, he was a big believer in this phrase, and he would oftentimes send me off with this phrase, keep the faith, press on. Paul is saying in a reflective way, I've done all that. He's got no regrets. This is a great way to live, isn't it? To actually be, close to your death and say, you know what? I lived a great life. I'm happy with what I accomplished. There's nothing but good stuff coming. No regrets. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? We should all live like that with no regrets. From now on, there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness. What that means for him is that he sees his death and his whatever is going to happen after death as like there is something for him. There is a prize. Paul oftentimes used imagery from the realm of athletics, from sports and competition, and the idea of winning and getting the crown. Remember, you've seen these pictures with people from the early Olympics, and they were donning, a garland around their head, that kind of thing, the crown, it's like a wreath, if you will. Paul sees that he has nothing to look forward to but being honored for what he was faithful to. From now on, there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. This is one of the things, this is the theme that Jesus had as well, which was, don't give up, stay in the game, and you know what? You're going to end up being very happy that you stayed faithful. This is Paul's belief as well. Okay, we're skipping verses 6 or 9 through 15. Although one of the things that is interesting about that in those verses is verse 11, where he says, "Only Luke is with me." Interesting, right? Because Luke, there's a reason why Luke was able to write about what Paul did. Because he was, Paul called him his physician. That's one of those things that's interesting. Okay, verse 16. 16, 17, 18, and then we're done with 2 Timothy. "At my first defense, no one came to my support, but all deserted me." Obviously, Paul, we know Paul went through some trials, right? And there were times when he did not have support from his peers. And he is citing that, I believe, because he's remember how he's used this imagery already with regard to how his death is similar to the death of Christ Jesus. And but all deserted me. Well, everybody deserted Christ Jesus as well, okay? May it not be counted against them. Again, this is like, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. Paul is very much slipping into this kind of that Christ Jesus dying mindset, okay, on the cross. "But the Lord stood by me and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear it." Remember, that was what was distinctive about Paul's ministry, in that he saw where the future of the church was out there. It got to get away from the parochial realm of Judaism, and it's got to get out to the Gentiles, because that's the future of the intention, fulfilling the intention of God in what Jesus did. "So I was rescued from the lion's mouth." What he might be referring to here is the fact that his opportunity to minister and get the word out was not cut short. He actually did have that opportunity, okay? And I think that's what he's referring to. There was no the saving from the. I don't think that meant that he necessarily was like put into, how the Christians got fed to the lions, that kind of thing. I don't think he's referring to that as something that happened to him. I think what he's saying, though, is that he was fortunate in that his life wasn't ended, unfortunately, early to make it impossible for him to do his ministry. So I think that's what he means by that I was rescued from the lion's mouth. "The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack and save me for his heavenly kingdom. Paul believed that there was a battle going on in the spiritual realm, right? And he's expressing us. One of the things that was difficult in that world was having confidence that these unseen evil spirits and powers would like somehow get a hold of you. Paul is like, ain't no thing to me. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. All right. Enough of that. Moving on. Luke chapter 18. I only have 10 minutes, but I'll probably get it done in less than that. Luke 18, verses 9 to 14. Now, last week we had Luke 18, verses 1 through 8. It was dealing with people having overconfidence in, people not staying faithful to the end by seeing the delay of the parousia. The parousia, that's the Greek word for coming. Luke is using Jesus' words to encourage them to not give up their faith, even though the parousia seems to be delayed. Verse 9. He also told them this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. I don't know if this is, I think this is also another thing that fits well into the context of encouragement, but he's trying to direct their energies toward, what are we actually having faith in, okay? He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that were righteous and regarded others with contempt. We don't always have these introductory things. This is a specific. This is the end, by the way, of this parable here. Is the end of the section of Luke whereby he rearranges a lot of the material that he had inherited from Mark's gospel. And then he goes back to Mark's order of events after this parable. He also told them this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and regarded others with contempt. Apparently, he's trying to say, and by the way, we're all in the same boat, okay? There is no, we're all in the same boat. Here we go. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The old-fashioned word for that is publican, okay? The Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. He starts to read off his resume. I fast twice a week. I give 1/10 of all my income. Jewish piety included all of this stuff. This guy actually is not doing anything wrong. He is just merely stating things that these were all requisite elements of a pious Jew, okay? So thanking God that you aren't somebody who is ignorant of God there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. Unless what you're doing is patting yourself on the back. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled. Well, I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. So what the point of this is. We don't want to paint this into a good guy, bad guy thing. Oh, the good guy is the tax collector. Oh, and the bad guy is the Pharisee. No. What we want to see is, where is the faith being put? One of the things that Jesus dealt with in his ministry was that the law, the teachings, the Torah, the enforcement of that had become something that was very ritualistic, something that had people start to feel like, because they had reduced religion to a lot of items with boxes. Can you check that box? Can you check that box? Check, 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 right? Well, the Pharisee is just demonstrating that he had become more related to the list and the checklist, than he had the source of the grace that is behind the power that makes him, that does justify him. This is what our parable is supposed to indicate. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. So the publican, he is rightfully recognizing the source is God. Okay, the source is God. There's absolutely nothing that I can point to in myself that makes me acceptable to God at all. Absolutely nothing. It's all God. This is the viewpoint of the early church. This is why there stopped to be an emphasis on the keeping of the law, because it's like the law doesn't justify. What justifies is the grace of God. And our goodness, our being good and all of that, that's our response out of the experience of grace, not an attempt to get grace, okay? For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, but all who humble themselves will be exalted. This is what he's trying to indicate, that the only people who will actually get forgiveness, who will experience the blessings of forgiveness, will be those people who properly recognize it's all God, 100% God. God. It's all God. I can't point to anything that I do that makes me acceptable to God. Simple as that. It's hard for us to get, though, because our ego loves to think of, oh, you know what? I really do deserve this. I'm a good person. I'm certainly better than that person. This is what Jesus is emphasizing. Is like there is no, there's no such thing as any of that. God's love is abundant and available to all, and nobody can pat themselves on the back for, yeah, I did a good job in deserving God's love and God's grace. This isn't a conflict with what Paul said. Paul was grateful for the grace that he had received, but he didn't point to what he did as like, oh, I've earned God's grace. No, he never did that. It was all an experience of grace. This is it. I got to finish this up. I got to wrap this up. Until next time, peace.